Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video. Today we're looking at the OV-10A mod for DCS World. This has been out for a couple of years, but I finally come around to trying it out. Mostly because the Marianas World War II Islands map was released very recently, and that gives us a very good base for operations on simulating some sort of Vietnam era stuff, which the OV-10 Bronco, of course, was most heavily involved in the real world. Now today we're going to be looking at a few different things with regards to the mod, everything from its flight dynamics and characteristics, how good it is or isn't to fly when it comes to general handling, its sort of beyond the limit or on the limit abilities or capabilities when it comes to stalling, spinning, single engine stuff, various things of that nature. We'll also be testing out very briefly some of the weapons, the guns and the rocket pods here on this bombing range here that I've designed for a little bit of weapons practice. We'll then proceed to do a little bit of formation flying with another OV-10 Bronco here, doing orbits around the base just to demonstrate some of the smooth handling characteristics of this aircraft, and finally coming in to land for a very short approach, which this aircraft is of course probably most known for, and it does work really well in DCS World with maximum brakes and maximum reverse thrust. It is quite a fun little airplane to fly. So without further ado, sit back and enjoy this little overview. Okay folks, welcome to the cockpit of the OV-10 here on this little Vietnam era forward operating base that I've built. As we have a couple of Hues flying along here, which is pretty cool, with those blades chopping through the air, so iconic, absolutely awesome. So let's go start engine number one. Let's close the canopy here as well. We'll introduce the fuel. Ooh, let's bring the prop lever back. We're looking for 20%. Let's go back to run. It's extremely easy to pick up. Oh, there's another OV-10 just flying along there as well. We are going to fly a little bit in formation with that aircraft just so I can demonstrate to you some of the very nice handling characteristics of this airplane in close formation flying as well. Right, let's go same with engine number one. Start that up. It's a very easy airplane to get up and go. So anybody who wants, well, one, it's free, which is great. And by the way, this cockpit doesn't look bad at all, I have to say, for a free mod. Okay, it could be better. You can turn the mirrors on, but there's a bit of a glitch where they get... I should probably introduce the fuel here as well. There's a bit of a glitch where it starts to freeze, and then you might have the same picture frozen in there for a while. That's why I don't turn them on. So there's a couple of glitches with this mod, like the landing gear also flickers on and off sometimes, which is a little bit annoying. And the external model is not great when you're close up. Right, I think we're good to go here. Let's get the prop levers up for takeoff, and let's go flaps to half. And I like having the gun sight reticle on straight away, so I think we can taxi out here. This aircraft uses differential braking, which is a right pain in the butt, but for anybody who's been flying the L-39, you'll get used to it pretty quickly, I think. Now, I did want to add a heck of a lot more objects, helicopters, planes to this base, but unfortunately I'm already struggling for FPS here, and I don't actually know why. I guess it's just all the Marianas Islands map, which is so tree heavy and makes it a little bit tricky here. Right, let me get my first gripe out of the way. This aircraft doesn't have native force feedback as a mod, which means I've had to create my own profile, which isn't the end of the world. I did a little bit of research, tried to create what is effectively a sort of realistic feeling aircraft. Now, this has direct linkages for the flight controls. There's no computers or gizmos or anything here. It's just cables going to the ailerons and to the elevator. But unfortunately, and that means that basically as speed increases, you know, we're going to get more control stick forces, which is absolutely awesome. So I think I've tuned it to a point of where it's so enjoyable to fly with force feedback. But like I say, every aircraft is enjoyable to fly with force feedback. The downside is, because there's no native force feedback support from the mod, there's no trim effect. So in other words, with an aircraft such as this, you know, when you trim, the elevator will displace up and down as you trim, which means the stick needs to displace up or down as well as I trim, but it doesn't. I have absolutely no idea what's happening with the trim here, as if it's some sort of fly-by-wire jet. Even some fly-by-wire jets will give you that feedback anyway. So effectively, I'm back to the old ages of using the Thrustmaster Warthog or something here, because I have got no idea with that regard. Until I start flying and actually feeling what the nose is doing up and down, I've got no idea what sort of flight regime I'm in here, just based on the stick. With that gripe out of the way, let's go for a takeoff. So props fully forward, we're looking good. We're on the brakes, we're off the brakes, and let's go. Another Huey coming along here. Looking for 84 knots. Very nice aircraft to fly, rotate smoothly. Anybody who just wants to enjoy flying an airplane, this is the plane to do it in. Gears coming up, flaps coming up, a little bit of a crosswind from the left. I honestly couldn't praise it enough for how stable and beautiful this thing feels. Now, without force feedback, I have tried you know, just tuning my stick like a regular sort of Warthog or equivalent spring-loaded stick, and it's nowhere near as fun. But once you feel that load on the stick for that kind of heaviness and sturdiness that this aircraft has to offer, it's absolutely freaking amazing. Now let me tell you something that I really, really, really dislike about this airplane with regards to flight dynamics, and it's not immersion braking, because it involves pushing the airplane to the limits, and I don't think most people will be doing that anyway. It's not really. By the way, let's bring the props back here. We shouldn't really be overstressing them, so just bring the RPMs back into the green band here, and we're going to do a couple of attack runs onto this practice bombing range that I have set up. So what we'll do is we'll just set up our guns, master arm, and our pylons. Very easy. This is all you need to do, and now it's a case of just point and shoot. Super easy airplane, like I said, to get up and go. It's an extremely stable gun platform, extremely stable rocket platform. Let's go for the... what should we go for? Where's the SA2 radar? There it is. Let's go for the SA2 radar with rockets now. So a little bit of a miss on that second salvo. Bring it out. Little bombing range here that I have created for practicing with some burnt out targets, ZS-150 trucks and various things, which looks pretty cool, I think. So let's come in for a gun run. Now, like I was saying, there's one thing in the aerodynamics of this airplane that is pretty broken. That is, it's extremely draggy. In other words, the lift to drag ratio here is a little bit off. The reason I say that is because it's obvious in a number of situations. One, in real life, this aircraft has a glide ratio of approximately 14:1. Now, that's not great by any stretch of the imagination. But I have something to compare it to, which is the Kristen Eagle that I fly on my days off doing aerobatics, which is a small biplane, which is even worse at around 12:1. And I know what that thing glides like, and it doesn't glide well. But this thing in DCS, if you turn the engines off, or if you go idle thrust and then feather the props, it glides way worse. And I mean way worse. It literally falls out of the sky. The other thing is, you can... and we've got 4 7.62mm machine guns, as you can see. It's pretty cool. This thing has a lot of firepower, really stable, really easy to fly, really easy to shoot. I'm just a huge fan of just flying this thing around in general. And in terms of just general handling, yes, it's slow and lethargic. It reminds me a lot of the Su-25 and maybe even to some degree the L-39 with how smooth and predictable it feels. Except it's a lot slower than both aircraft. Now, the other reason I believe that, you know, the drag is just way out is, one, when you get below the drag curve on approach, say, this thing just falls like a brick and you just don't have enough power to recover. Now, I get that it's not a fighter jet, but we're talking about over 1,400 shaft horsepower for an airplane, which in this config will weigh like 4 tons, maybe a touch over 4 tons. And I mean, that's comparable to a World War II fighter, you know, maybe a P-40 or something in many ways, in terms of, at least in terms of, you know, thrust to weight. And behind the drag curve, this thing is just dead. You're just completely, you got 0 power to recover, right? Unless you're prepared to drop the nose completely, you're not going to do it. Now, the other thing about it is that if you were to just have max power, point straight down or a steep angle towards the ground, you're barely going to exceed the V&E speed. Now, I don't know exactly how it's like in real life, but I can tell just from how slowly it accelerates in an extremely steep dive with max power. This thing is just way too draggy. I don't know how it is in real life. Like I said, I'm not trying to say what's right. I'm just saying, to me, it feels a little bit off. On the plus sides, in terms of stalling and things, there are some positives. So if we go take the thrust off on one engine, and we try and keep it straight with the rudder here. Now you'll notice it does not, even with this attitude, which is not really that high. I mean, we're doing 8 degrees up, 7 degrees up. I look, by the way, the stick is shaking in my hand, telling me I'm about to stall. I'm going full opposite rudder, and it still wants to go into a spin. In this particular situation, yeah, I'd say it's pretty realistic. I mean, that's exactly what I would expect, except the fact that a single engine in this airplane should be enough to sustain a slight climb without dropping the speed off like crazy, and it just doesn't do it. Like I say, it just doesn't have, it's just too draggy, this thing. Now, it does go into stalls and spins. The nose drop isn't super pronounced. I would maybe think that maybe in real life it could be a little more pronounced, but it's not terrible. So if we, for example, take the thrust off, the power off, now we'll wait for that shake, and eventually, okay, I would expect it to kind of have a more pronounced nose drop, but it will go into a spin, which is pretty nice. We can recover from the spin. In fact, we'll recover from the spin itself, which isn't necessarily unrealistic. Depends on the aircraft, if you let go of the controls. But the thing I really dislike, apart from the fact that it's extremely draggy, is that you cannot go into an accelerated stall. So, below VA, which is the design maneuver speed, basically any conventional aircraft that isn't fly-by-wire, if you have max stick deflection, if you pull back the stick fully below the VA speed or the maximum design maneuver speed, which in this aircraft I'm sure it's not going to be less than 150 knots. I mean, it's probably more than that. You know, above the VA speed, you'll exceed the G limits before you reach maximum alpha, critical alpha, but below VA, you'll reach the critical alpha before you reach the maximum G limit. So, that said, what it means is if I was to pull back on the stick fully now, I should snap the airplane immediately into some sort of spin or a stall, right? But see what happens. So look, we're doing 150 knots, which is definitely below VA, right? Let's pull back. It's not stalled. It's shaking, but it's not stalled. It's still flying, still flying, still flying, and now it goes into stall. And the reason it goes into a stall is actually because as a result of the airspeed dropping, whereas in real life, you should be able to go into an accelerated stall at basically any airspeed. I mean, even if you go, like, if we, for example, just to demonstrate the point of what I mean here, I am going to dive it down. And by the way, just notice how slowly it's going to accelerate. We've got full power. Look at how slowly it accelerates. Look at how slowly it accelerates. How slowly in this kind of steep dive does it accelerate right now? If I was to now pull back abruptly, you see, it's still flying, still flying, still flying, still flying, and now it stalls because it's run out of airspeed. So this is a big limitation because that is not how any conventional aircraft should really fly. Now, is it a big deal? No. I am more than happy to forgive it because most of us are not going to be trying to do accelerated stalls anyway, and if you fly it within its envelope, which you should be doing, I guess, if you're flying it in combat regardless, you're not really using the OV-10 to dogfight stuff, right? If you were, then I think it'd be pretty immersion breaking, but because all we're doing is effectively just flying around trying to shoot at stuff and have a stable gun platform and just being like a forward area controller, you know, I don't think it's something that is immersion braking. By the way, look at this map. It really reminds me of the War Thunder Pearl Harbor map where you take off, isn't it? So similar. I mean, I just remember back in the day. It was like 10 years ago for me when I was flying it. Right. One more thing I just want to demonstrate to you, which again is going from a negative to a positive here, is I think this airplane is lovely to fly in formation. It's super stable and super smooth. So what we're going to do is we are going to join up on this OV-10 here in the turn. There's a couple of Hueys behind us here. Let's come in on the inside. And we'll join on the outside of that OV-10. And I'm just going to demonstrate to you. Now, the other thing is it's a proper stick and rudder airplane, which I really like. So you have to work the rudder in the turns, or you should. If you're an airline pilot like me flying airliners, then, you know, it's easy to get lazy and forget about the fact that you need to use rudder. It's quite easy to slow down. It's very predictable, and even though the engines aren't super responsive, it's very predictable in terms of getting the power on and off. So, and you can fly very nice close formation in this aircraft without any sort of issue. At least I find it extremely simple. And look, you can just about freeze it in this beautiful position, and just look how easy, stable it is, right? Now, you can get super close. We'll wait for this guy to start his turn as well, because the AI is a little bit abrupt in how quickly they start their turns. But it's a real joy to fly this airplane in, you know, when you're not pushing it to the ultimate limit, I think. And I think with the amount of weapons, which we haven't really explored here in this particular mission, but with the amount of weapons that this thing has to offer, let's try and join up with some closer formation here in the turn. I have to be very careful, by the way, because my wings behind me are going to be very close to his tail, and I mean very close. So I don't want to bump him here, but we can try and get sort of ballpark Blue Angel-y. He's going to start rolling out here, right? Can I just freeze this? A little bit of rudder, a little bit of rudder. Don't worry if you're up and down a little bit in these turns, you know. I mean, even the display teams there, especially when you're pulling some G's, you're always going to be wobbling about a little bit. Now, it's nice to freeze it, of course, in a certain position, but there we go. Get the hang of this. It's going to roll out pretty abruptly, I think, so look at the sunlight there, by the way. Like I said, the external model isn't amazing, in my opinion. It leaves a little bit to be desired when you zoom in, but at this kind of angle and view, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. I mean, for a mod, it's awesome. You know, I wouldn't be counting every rivet anyway most of the time when you're sitting inside the cockpit. The cockpit is very nicely done, I think. Actually, definitely one of the better things about this aircraft is we're going to peel off here in a second to try and demonstrate to you the short field capability of this airplane. Alright, let's just pass these Hueys. Whoa! Jesus. Well, at least that'll look like a cool break. Alright, I think he was avoiding one of those Hueys. Right, let's come in for a landing. Look, full power. I mean, honestly, this thing, you need full power a lot of the time in this thing. When you're flying straight level, it's fine, but as soon as you're putting at least a little bit of G's, you need a lot of power. And I don't know. I haven't flown the real thing. I'm not saying what's right, but again, you have to forgive some of my criticisms. Let's go gear down, full flap. Let's move the prop levers up max for takeoff and landing. And we'll come here. We'll keep it just under 100. And the cool thing about this thing is it can stop on an absolute dime. And this is what I'm going to demonstrate to you with max brakes and max reverse thrust. So we come in here. It's actually a very, very legitimate place to demonstrate the short field capabilities of the OV-10 Bronco with all these obstacles and a steep approach here for this airstrip. Alright, let's slow it down to around 90 or 85. There we go. Got to be very careful so I don't want to stall it either, of course. Come in between these trees. Alright, here we go. You ready? Yeah, a sort of smooth touchdown. Bit of a bounce. Max reverse thrust, max brakes. Now, we did have a bit of a bounce because it does have very, very spongy, very springy gear. But it's also very nice. I think Bob Hoover would really enjoy flying this airplane doing arrows. I just wish it had a little bit more acceleration, a little bit less drag. I think that's where it's kind of going slightly wrong. Let's retract the flaps and taxi off here beside these OV-10s. So overall, my impressions, guys, if you like the Vietnam era stuff, or even if you want to fly this, let's say in the Cold War Germany map, because you know I think the Germans had these things. I'm not sure in what capacity you could really use it in a World War III sort of scenario on the Cold War Germany map, but either way, it's a great airplane to fly in. Yeah, it's got a couple of bugs here with, you know, graphical stuff, but it's beautiful. I love flying it. I love shooting stuff with it. It's a real beauty of how stable, how solid it feels, especially if you have a force feedback stick and you can tune it a little bit. I would 100% recommend. I think I'm definitely going to incorporate this in Vietnam era missions. I just wish we had a Vietnam era map. I know this is not a terrible substitute, but the problem is there are islands, and they sort of do give it away slightly in the sense that, you know, we are on an island. You can see that you're always on an island and not really in a proper kind of, you know, Vietnam sort of thing. And obviously navigation-wise, well, it's pretty easy, unlike real Vietnam, where all of this would have been, you know, a map, a chart, you going out to a designated box on a chart to provide, you know, forward area control stuff and shoot some kind of rockets with smoke and some bombers coming in and dropping bombs. I mean, it's freaking awesome, the Vietnam. I could go on forever how much I want the Vietnam map and the Vietnam era conflict in a flight simulator, but anyway, for now, this is the OV-10. Hope you've enjoyed this little overview. Please smash the like button if you've enjoyed it, and comment down below, tell me what you think, and tell me if there's any other mods that you think are worthy of doing a little test flight in. So with that said, folks, thanks very much. Hopefully catch you in the next video. Adios.